Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's CruachanKeith here, and today we are looking at the top 10 1980s Amiga games. Let's take a look. So the Amiga was released in 1985, but wasn't widely available. That happened in 1986. There were some production issues, but it became very widely available in 1986. Its most popular model, the Amiga 500, was released in 1987, and that's when the gaming really took off on the console. There were games released at launch in 85, but certainly nowhere near the numbers that came out from 87 onwards. The library of games is pretty immense. There was a huge amount released for it, and some of my favorites came from the 1990s onwards, but that's not to say that there weren't some amazing games released in the 80s, and that's what we're going to look at today. So without further ado, here's the top 10 1980s Amiga games. Okay, so starting things off at number 10, we have got The Bard's Tale. This is one of the granddads of computer role-playing games, and is a really detailed and advanced game for its time. You play the role of a bard who leads a bunch of adventurers to defeat the evil Mangar the Dark, who has cursed the town of Scarabray with eternal winter. By today's standards, that's one seriously generic plot, but this was originally released in 1985, coming to the Amiga in 88, so we can forgive that. Gameplay involves a lot of character development, which in turn involves a lot of grinding, but once your characters are strong enough, you leave town and head for the dungeons where the real fun begins. Graphically, this is also pretty good for its time, with a small window representing the 3D world. A classic of its time that has spawned many sequels and remakes, The Bard's Tale, or Tales of the Unknown Volume 1 to give it its full title, is my number 10. At number 9, we got XENON 2. The sequel to 1988's XENON is a vertically scrolling shoot 'em up that received rave reviews at the time of launch, whilst also being criticised for its difficulty level. It features really smooth and colourful graphics, with a really cool soundtrack from the electronica band Bomb the Bass. The plot continues on from the first game. The Xenites are back with a plan to wipe out space-time or something by planting 4 bombs in space-time areas. It's your job to fight off the bizarre wildlife around them, and then beat the boss, which shuts off the bomb. You collect money on the way that can be used for upgrades in Colin's bargain basement shop. Definitely an Amiga classic you should check out. Number 8, POPULOUS. Regarded by many as the first real God game, POPULOUS was developed by the legendary Peter Molyneux at Bullfrog. You play the role of God and command a small party of followers. The more followers you obtain and the greater their achievements, the more power you will be awarded. You compete against another god, and it's up to you to attack their followers and rid them from the world. The game was so unique and groundbreaking on its release that it went on to sell millions of copies. There have been numerous sequels and games influenced by POPULOUS, but for its time, nothing beats the original. At number 7, Dungeon Master. One of the first real-time 3D role-playing games ever made, Dungeon Master was originally developed for the Atari ST in 1987, coming to the Amiga in 1988. A lot of elements that we come to expect in computer role-playing games throughout the 90s were introduced in Dungeon Master, such as sound changing when an enemy is near, or being able to manipulate objects in the 3D window. The story itself was very basic: go to a dungeon and retrieve a fire staff. But with Dungeon Master, it was about the journey, not the destination. A true classic in every sense of the word, and of course the Amiga version was better than the ST. At number 6, FA-18 Interceptor. When this Amiga exclusive was released in 1988, people could not believe just how good it was. It was epic. This was the game people used to show off their machine to friends. In the game, you can fly either an F-18 or F-16 in various missions. Admittedly, there are only 7 missions, but they are all quite different and offer a lot of playtime as well as replayability. The carrier landings were always an enjoyable challenge, and the feeling of accomplishment when you pull one off is awesome even to this day. At number 5, STARGLIDER 2. An epic game when it was released in 1988. Your planet is threatened by the Egrons, who are building a massive laser. You have to destroy the parts of this laser before they blow your planet to bits. The game is a 3D shooter with a lot of strategy elements throughout. This was another of those games that really showed how powerful the 1980s Amiga computer was. The 8-bit consoles and computers that most people had at the time could never manage graphics like this. Just look at it. At number 4, R-Type. You can't call yourself a retro gamer if you haven't played at least one iteration of R-Type. When it was released in 1987, it basically wrote the book on how side-scrolling shooters should be made, from perfect gameplay, amazing graphics and catchy music. The Amiga version was released in 1989 and was a near-perfect clone of the arcade version. All the top magazines of the day gave it glowing reviews. There have been many sequels and remakes, even on modern consoles, but the original 80s shooter is still the best. At number 3, Elite. Elite really needs no introduction. Written and developed by David Braben and Ian Bell, it is one of the first open-ended space combat adventure trading games ever made. The graphics were revolutionary when the game originally released, but obviously look outdated now. It is easy to lose hours, even days, playing this game trying to achieve the Elite status. The game really was open-ended and you could choose what way you wanted to play it, from being a trader trying to make a lot of cash, or a pirate challenging innocent freighters and stealing their cargo. The follow-up, Frontier, received mixed reviews, but I loved it. Frontier First Encounters was the 3rd release and was a disaster. Elite Dangerous was released in 2014 and is a phenomenal game. True to the original, but with modern day style. At number 2, Carrier Command. Carrier Command was groundbreaking when it released in 1988 and received amazing reviews from pretty much all gaming magazines at the time. The gameplay was fantastic, but it was the graphics that were making people's jaws drop. The game itself is a cross between a simulator and a real-time strategy game where you control a futuristic aircraft carrier in a fight to control an archipelago of islands against a more advanced enemy aircraft carrier. You also have control over the craft contained within the aircraft carrier, and these can all be piloted separately by you. It's a joy to play even today. Unbelievably, a sequel was released in 2012 for PC and Xbox 360, but it wasn't too well received. And my number 1 top 10 1980s Amiga game is Stunt Car Racer. Stunt Car Racer by Jeff Crammond was a very, very unique racing game and still holds a lot of charm today. A lot of people still play this, even capturing the footage for this I ended up playing on it much longer than I intended. I ain't complaining. It was presented in full 3D and featured elevated racetracks with loops and jumps very similar to roller coasters. I can still remember getting butterflies in my stomach from some of the jumps. The game itself consisted of a league with lots of fun and silly characters, but all races only ever had 2 cars, you and an opponent. A unique gem that you should check out if you haven't already. So there you have it. That's my top 10 1980s Amiga games, and as you can see, there were some pretty cracking games released throughout the 80s for the Amiga, and I found it hard to even make a top 10 as I was going through the list trying to remember what I was playing or what people were talking about. More came along, but as I said, the Amiga has a huge catalogue of games and you should check it out. But they were my top 10. Hope you liked the video, and please leave a like, please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. If you like that video and if you like what I do on the channel, please leave a like and please subscribe because it helps very much. Thank you.